Hi, do you want to know some top strategies for speaking English like a native? This is Susan Broder from Speak Languages and Travel the World, here to help you improve your English with minimum effort and maximum benefit. Yes, now there are some strategies for learning to speak English like a native, which are quite well known. One of them is called shadowing. Now, shadowing is actually when you listen to a film, for example, and you try and speak at the same time as the film is carrying on. So first you listen to maybe, I don't know, a line or two, and then you replay it and you speak over the actor with the same intonation, the same speed. But I'm not sure that's actually one of the best ways to practice your language, because you can't hear yourself and hear the actor at the same time, so you're not really sure whether you're pronouncing it correctly. So I usually prefer to stop. So you listen and then stop the sentence or the piece of the sentence and repeat it. Trying to imitate the intonation and the melody of the language, so the pronunciation, the intonation, the melody. It wouldn't be a bad idea to actually use your mobile phone to record yourself at the same time. And if you do it just for a short piece, I mean not anything very long, a couple of lines, and then you compare your recorded version with the version on the film, you'll notice how close you are to the original or not. So that's one way of practicing. However, that way there is okay for your pronunciation and your intonation. If you can manage, of course, it would be good that you also memorize the chunks that are in that, because chunks are very important to be able to then speak freely. Just putting all the pieces of chunks, let's say, all the chunks together like a puzzle and making natural conversation. So I'd like to give you some examples of that. So, for example, take phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are something extremely difficult to learn, and you have to practice them a lot. So the best is to choose the one or two phrasal verbs you want to learn in a week or even in less, maybe a phrasal verb for every 2 days, but then practice it in any context you can find. For example, catch up with. Now, catch up with means to do something that you didn't have time to do before. So imagine you've gone on holiday and then you come back after a few days, and of course there's a lot to do which you didn't do because you were on holiday. So you could catch up with the gardening because the grass has grown too tall. Or you could catch up with the latest news because you don't know what's been happening in your area. Or you could catch up with the neighbours and hear what their latest news is. Or you could catch up with your correspondence because you go back to the office and you have a lot of emails to write. So if you then use the expression in your everyday life for 1 or 2 days, it'll become second nature and it'll be natural, and you'll have memorized it without too much effort. Actually, it's quite fun to see if you can incorporate it in your daily life. Of course, you can also vary this with tenses. Let's take the example of bring up. Bring up means to mention in the context I'm thinking of. It also means, for example, to raise children. So I was brought up in London, for example. So bring up is what your parents do when they raise you. But in the context I'm thinking of, I'm talking about mentioning it. So you can speak in the present tense and say, I'm going to bring up the subject at our wedding. So it means I'm going to talk about this at our wedding. I don't know, the fact that we bought a new house or we're going on a particular honeymoon. I'm going to bring up that subject at the wedding. Well, actually, I said it was the present tense, but yes, I actually used the future. Then you could also bring it up in the past and say, for example, I hope we can say, for example, my mum brought up the subject that we're never punctual, and it was quite embarrassing. In fact, she always brings up embarrassing anecdotes from our childhood when we're together with friends. So in this case, I've used the present tense, and not only, but I've used the third person. She always brings up the subject. Do you think she'll bring up the story of when you fell off your horse? So here we're using a future tense. So when you choose to repeat phrasal verbs or chunks, try and diversify how you do it. So present tense, past tense, continuous, and also different contexts. So if you do that for about 2 days, you'll have learned it, and then you can go on to the next phrasal verb or the next chunk. So these are 2 strategies, one for memorizing and practicing whilst trying to memorize, and the other for intonation, pronunciation, and repeating also the tune, the melody of the music. The melody of the language, or the music of the language. And both of these strategies will make you sound much more like a native, and it'll also help you with your free speaking and your free writing if you learn these chunks. So I hope this was useful. Don't forget to subscribe here, and see you in the next video. Bye!